Hello everyone. I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about how I wrote my book, Pandora. Now, Pandora is a little bit different from my other books in that it is a novella. First things first, what is a novella? So traditionally, novels are between about 80,000 to 100,000 words. Novels can be longer than 100,000 words. However, most publishing companies are going to be less than likely to publish a book that long, because then that just makes the cost of the book more by having to add more pages and sometimes having to go into more custom binding for said book. Whereas novellas are shorter than novels, and they are less frequently published because traditional publishing has found that most people prefer to read full-sized books as opposed to smaller novella books. For whatever reason, it's just the lay of the land. So first things first, because novellas are less frequently published by traditional publishing companies, I publish Pandora through my publishing house, Cloud Orchid Publishing. As I have mentioned in previous videos, I frequently use my publishing company in order to publish books that normally would not be picked up by a traditional publisher, whether it's the layout, whether it's the length, whether it's I want to include color illustrations, whether it's I want to go with something completely non-traditional in the way that it's created, whatever. Or if I want to bust through the red tape, such as with my romance novels, where I just want to get them out as fast as possible. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, I do have stories published traditionally, mainly my Love of the Sea novel published by Inksmith Publishing, and I am currently in the process of sending off Succumb to Darkness to also be traditionally published. I digress. A novella is typically about 60,000 words, which obviously is much shorter than a typical novel. And as you could see, Pandora is very much shorter than a traditional novel. And that is done on purpose, in that I am the type of writer in that I write a story to its completion. Whatever length that is whatever length that is. I don't make the rules, my brain makes the rules. I frequently tend to write most of my stories as novel length. However, every once in a while, I will find that a story is best suited to being either a short story or a novella. And Pandora is one of these cases where it was best suited as a novella. What's the difference between a short story and a novella? Again, it's word count. So short stories will vary in word count depending on what the publication is requiring for word count. Usually it's anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 words, whereas the sweet spot is most short stories are published at about 2,500 words. Itty bitty bite-sized stories, whereas novellas are kind of like novel light, if you want a comparison. How exactly did I go about originally writing Pandora? So to begin with, Pandora was actually originally titled The Seashell. And my dear friend Taz made the suggestion that I decide to change the title of the story to be the main character's name, Pandora, rather than the seashell, that it just offered more mystery and was more tantalizing for the reader to want to pick this particular book up. So I decided to change the title. Thank you so much, Taz, for that suggestion, because honestly, I love the title Pandora much better than The Seashell. The reason that I originally had that title was because this story actually started, once again, as an assignment at my college, Columbia College of Chicago. A frequent assignment that we had. It was both a game that we would play in class, as well as an assignment that we would have where we'd have to write up a little section of what would eventually become a novel-length story. And that was the hope, anyway, of these assignments, was to trigger us to be able to write novel-length stories. Although many people also converted them into short stories or novellas, there really weren't any rules with that. It was more so jumping off points for us to be inspired to write. And this game was where you take a person and you take an object and you take another person and you take an action. And so how exactly that worked is we would go around the room, and the teacher would call on certain people, and you would get to pick one of these things. So anywhere from like 3 to 5 people would be called on to create the elements for the story that we were all going to write. And that's the thing, is that you can have 3 to 5 things and everybody's going to write a different story, which is what's so cool about this assignment. So with Pandora, we had man, seashell, woman, and betrayal. Those were the 4 elements that were selected for this particular assignment. I have many other stories that have been based on that. I had one where it was boy, girl, and needle. I had another one where it was woman, mittens, woman, snow. I could go on and on. It's basically, you just pick these random elements and then you just run with it. And it's a really, really fun assignment, and it's an easy way to help you get inspired if you're just really stuck with trying to create a new story. So out of that, that's how I came up with the idea of combining the elements of the seashell and the woman, in that I made that Pandora. And I fashioned the story of Pandora around the original fairy tale of Thumbelina, in that in the original story, this old woman who never had any children and really wanted to have a child goes to this witch, and the witch gives her it's either a barley corn seed or a mustard seed. It's always some seed that's very, very small. And then the old woman plants the seed, and then this beautiful plant grows, and out of the flower comes Thumbelina. And I wanted it to be kind of like that our main character, Isaac, he's an old man. He never got married. He's never had any children. He doesn't have any other relatives. And he's just really lonely and wants a companion. And I know what a lot of y'all are thinking, that automatically means some sort of romantic or sexual connotation. And that's just not the case. We're going with the very old school traditional idea of a companion, in just that he basically wants someone to spend time with, to be a friend, to talk to. And so he goes to a witch, and she tells him to go on the beach and to walk around until he finds his companion. And he's like, okay, that's really weird advice, but I will listen to you and do what you say, because she's the witch, and that's what you do, is you just do what the witch tells you if you want your thing. And he finds a seashell. And when he opens the seashell, he finds Pandora inside, and she is his magical companion that has been assigned to him. So that's how I combine those elements of a man and then a woman and a seashell. And the betrayal is obviously this whole dynamic that I came up with later on as I was writing this assignment, that there is another woman, the Lady Brighton, and that Isaac betrays Pandora for this love interest that has suddenly entered his life. And chaos ensues, as one does. So that is how I took those original elements from this very basic school assignment and turned it into this whole fantastical novella. Now you may be thinking, why did I sit on this story so long, especially because it's a shorter story, in order to get it published? Well, the answer to that is, if you've seen in my other videos, I went on a whole adventure working as a professional model while I was in college and for several years after I graduated. And there was just a big series of events in my life that basically delayed me doing anything with any of my stories for a while. And then once I got back into writing in about 2015 was when I really started to get serious again. It was just whatever grabbed my attention at the time. And for just reasons, it was love of the sea. And things have just kind of snowballed from there. And the main reason why I particularly picked up Pandora again was actually because, once again, my dear friend Taz alerted me to that the publication that she worked for was having a new round of submissions, which is where publications will post on their websites that they are taking submissions for some particular thing, and then they put all of the requirements on there and you can submit to them and blah blah blah. And the particular submissions were for novellas, which is a very rare thing, so of course I wanted to jump on that. And the most complete novella that I had at that time was Pandora. And so I decided to take that very old story and decided to rework it, edit it, just clean it up, bring it more up to my personal standards, as well as add some more elements to the story because it was a little bit lacking. Because as any writer will tell you, when they do their first rough draft of any story, it is kind of like, once upon a time some stuff happened and then some other stuff happened in the end. Like, it's it's very disjointed, it's very simple, it's just you getting like your general ideas on the page, and that's kind of how the story was. So I had to really polish it and add in more story arc to it in order to make it a fully realized book. And then, because once again, my friend Taz is just such a wonderful friend, she actually offered to look over the story for me as a beta reader, and she made more suggestions, which I made those changes to the story, one of the big ones being changing the title. And unfortunately, the publication decided not to take my story, which, as I've said in my other videos, when you get a rejection from a publisher, it does not necessarily mean that your story is bad. It just means that it's not right for what they were looking to publish. And that can be for any number of reasons. Yes, it can be because your story is bad. Unfortunately, that is a factor. Sometimes we write bad stories, and that's okay. You always have the opportunity to fix them or to scrap them, whatever. But sometimes it just doesn't fit with whatever they're going for. And I've noticed that a lot of publications are really right now looking for a lot of stuff that deals more heavily in modern times and deals with modern social issues. And that's just not really a thing that I write in a lot of my stories. A lot of my stories are the classic fantasy or their historical fiction taking place in other time periods. So modern day is just not really a concept that I really explore outside of my romance novels. So I was perfectly okay with the rejection, and honestly, I was more excited about that. The whole submission process got me excited about my story again and had me decide to go ahead and finish it and polish it. And as I said, because it is a rarity for publications to open up submissions to novellas, and I knew this, that was kind of like my one opportunity for who knows how long until another novella submission was going to open up. So that is why I just went ahead and decided to publish it through Cloud Orchid Publishing rather than sitting on that story and having it just wait around until who knows when. And then on top of it, the chances of it being rejected were a high possibility, because rejection is honestly always a high possibility. Getting published is like winning the lottery, y'all. So always assume that you're probably going to get rejected in the first round, because it's just such a high rate. It's really not something to take personally, it's just the lay of the land. So given all of that information, that's why I went ahead and decided to publish it myself. And I'm so glad that I did, because this story has become so popular. It is honestly my second bestseller at my table whenever I go to conventions. The number one bestseller being Geisha Hands, actually. And a big part of that I really think is due to that people love books with pictures in them. But having Pandora as a close second really showed me that this was a story worth writing and that people really want to read it. So I am glad that even though I got rejected, I put that story out in the world, and now so many people can enjoy it. If y'all are interested in finding out more about Pandora, I do have a link below in the description to where you can purchase it on Amazon as both a softcover and as an ebook. At this time, I don't have any plans to write a sequel to Pandora. As I always say, if I don't have any immediate plans to create a sequel to any of my books, it usually means that I have written that story to completion. That doesn't mean a sequel is completely out of the question. It's just that I don't have any plans to create a sequel at this time, which goes for Pandora. The story is fairly complete. I did not really leave room for a sequel. And last but not least, a common question that I get about Pandora is, yes, I did design the cover art myself. It was originally an illustration that was going to accompany the novella in the publication that I had originally submitted it to, and after it got rejected, I just converted the illustration into being cover art. And I do believe that that cover art also plays a big role in people picking up this story and reading the back cover and then finding that this is a story that they're really going to enjoy. So again, really glad that that submission really pushed me to create this story and to create the cover art for it, because it is honestly a winning combo, y'all. And that's a big thing that I encourage with people, is that don't be afraid to submit stories, even if it's not your favorite story, or even if it's a story that you're not 100% confident in. Go ahead and work on it with the intent to submit it. And even if you end up not submitting it, or even if you end up submitting it and you get rejected, you still put the polish on that story and completed it, and that in itself is a win. And sometimes in the rejections you can receive back some really awesome feedback from the publisher in order to help you really put more polish on that story and make it a more marketable piece. So never be afraid to put yourself out there, because one of the big things that I tell people is technically stories are never finished. You can always edit it forever. You can always explore so many different avenues in the story arcs, in the storyline. At the end of the day, you have to at some point say, you be done. You put your knives down, chef be done. The story is done, and send it on its merry way and hope for the best. So don't be afraid that it doesn't have enough diamond polish on it. Put it out in the world and see what happens. So I want to thank y'all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a like, and if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all. I'll see y'all next time. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.